Hi everybody, welcome back. Glad you could tune in again. So we've reached the point that you all knew was coming. We have been thinking about what it means to be a godly man and what it means to be a godly woman, godly masculinity and godly femininity. And so inevitably, we come to the question of what those character traits start to look like when a godly man and a godly woman come closer together, when they start to get to know each other just that little bit better. And so we come to the book of Ruth and to chapter 3. In a moment I'm going to narrate what happens here for you, but before I do that, let me explain what's going on here. You know the story. It's the story of Ruth being sent at her mother-in-law Naomi's initiative to the threshing floor where Boaz and his companions are lying down to sleep for the night. And there some events unfold. Well, more about that in a second, but here's what's really going on in this narrative. The story is told in such a way that right from the beginning, it is charged with unspoken possibilities. And what happens is, as the reader reads it, the reader, we, are invited to imagine, well, what's really going on here? Nothing is said explicitly, of course. And so what's actually happening is that the text, the Spirit-inspired Word of God, is exposing the assumptions that are in our hearts. Because as we read it, the assumptions that we might make come to the surface almost unbidden in our minds. We start to read about a young woman going to meet a young man at night at the threshing floor after he's been drinking, and so on and so forth. And our imaginations catch fire as we read the narrative. And so what's actually happening is the text reveals what's in our imaginations. And then, at a crucial point, which I'll highlight for you, we discover how close or how far we are from the reality of the hearts and the minds of the two individuals involved. So perhaps we will see how far we have to go before we get to the degree of integrity and propriety displayed by Ruth and Boaz. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's begin at chapter 3, verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you?" Rest is a term which is used in many different ways, but in some contexts it's used in relation to a marriage covenant. That it may be well with you. So for the first time, Naomi takes the initiative, and she's apparently seeking companionship, a husband for Ruth. "Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were?" Boaz, our relative, of course, is one of our redeemers, kinsman redeemer, and therefore under some kind of legal obligation, if the law is going to be obeyed, of course, he's under some kind of legal obligation to make some sort of provision for Naomi. It's not obvious that he's under any kind of legal obligation to Ruth, of course, who is just a daughter-in-law, but nonetheless, we'll come to that maybe another time. Anyway, here's how Naomi continues. "See, he's winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor." Not the most obvious place, you might think, to go and meet a gentleman. "Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself. Perfume yourself. Put on your cloak," the simlah in Hebrew, used elsewhere of a bridal gown, "and go down to the threshing floor, but don't make yourself known to the man until he's finished eating and drinking. Keep yourself secret until he's drunk a little bit, maybe a bit more. Wait till he's finished eating, and wait till he's finished drinking before you make yourself known to him. When he lies down," verse 4, "observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet." Feet in Hebrew is a euphemism sometimes for other parts of the human body. "And lie down," presumably next to him, and, quote, "he will tell you what to do," unquote. Just pause there a second. You can see how already, if there is anything unseemly in the hearts or the imaginations of anybody reading this, then those unseemly thoughts are coming to the surface. All the sniggers and guffaws and nudging one another on the back row have long since started by this point in the story. It's started to reveal what's actually in our hearts. Verse 5. And she replied, all that you say, I will do. So, verse 6, she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, and notice how the vocabulary now changes, it's no longer Boaz and Ruth. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. Can you see how the atmosphere becomes even more charged? In the darkness of night, we see a man and a woman. Again, the Spirit of God invites our imaginations to make of this what we will at this stage of the narrative. He said, who are you? A reasonable question. And she answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Remember, that's how she spoke of herself in the previous chapter. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. Well, if ever there was a sentence that could be read in multiple ways, that's it. Wings can refer, of course, to the wings of the Redeemer, the Lord, overshadowing his people, caring for them, rather like the Lord hovers over his people in the book of Deuteronomy 32, as he leads them to safety in the promised land. But wings can just refer to the skirt or the hem of a man's garment, his robe. Spread your robe over me, for you are a redeemer. We're supposed to get married, Boaz. Invite me into your bed, is how it could be read. What's Ruth inviting him to do, exactly? To redeem him as the Lord redeemed his people? Or something else? Again, the text invites our imaginations to make themselves known. Verse 10, and he said, May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you've not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. You see, at this point, we start to discern the true motives of the actual characters in the story. My daughter, your kindness in not being attracted by the younger and better-looking men. Clearly, that's not what you're looking for. Not even wealth, actually, whether poor or rich. Verse 11. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask, because he knows perfectly well what she's asking for. She's not asking to share his bed. She's asking for redemption. She's asking for what the Lord gave to his people and promised to all people who would come humbly to him. For all my fellow townswomen know that you are a worthy woman. That's the feminine form of the phrase used to describe David's mighty men. Men of integrity, men of strength. Well, here is a woman of integrity. All my fellow townsmen know that you're that sort of woman. You're not that sort of woman. You're not the sort of woman that I've resisted opportunities to marry for the last 4-5 decades. And yet, now it is true that I am a redeemer. Yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing, then, as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. The redemption will take place in the morning. The redemption will not take place tonight. It's not, after all, that kind of a redemption. Now that, of course, sets us up for chapter 4 and for the encounter with the other kinsman redeemer. But for now, just notice this. What's happened is, as soon as these two characters started talking to each other, we realise that everything in their attitudes to one another, in their actions towards one another, are absolutely above reproach. And anything that we could have imagined, which may have been brought to the surface during the previous 8 or 9 verses or so. Any motives that we could have conceived that they were being driven by could not have been further from their minds. You see, this is a man and a woman who are absolutely determined to show the utmost propriety and integrity and kindness and decency to one another as their relationship blossoms here in Ruth chapter 3. That is godly manliness and godly femininity. The Lord bless you, and I hope very much to see you all very soon. Bye for now.